For the U.S. National Security Council says any Palestinian government must renounce violence, as you've just mentioned, and recognize Israel's right to exist. The official also said the United States supports Palestinian reconciliation on terms which promote the cause of peace, and that Hamas is, quote, a terrorist organization which targets civilians. Now, just days ago, in an interview with the U.S. magazine Newsweek, President Abbas expressed frustration with Obama's mediation efforts. The Palestinian president said it was Obama who suggested a full settlement freeze. I said, okay, I accept. We both went up the tree. After that, he came down with a ladder and he removed the ladder and said to me, jump. 3 times he did it. For more on this, I'm joined now by Saree Makdisi. He's a Palestinian scholar and author of the book Palestine Inside Out, an everyday occupation. He also teaches at the University of California in Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us, sir. How significant is this announcement that Hamas and the PLO will move towards a joint interim government ahead of elections in the occupied territories?
I mean, I think it's good that there's Palestinian reconciliation. I think the more Palestinians are divided, the easier it is for the Israelis to control them. So, in and of itself, I think it's a relatively good step. The problem, though, Arnan, is that when you put it in the wider perspective, you have to ask. I mean, people are talking about this as though this is a normal country where there's kind of 2 big political groups, and now they've agreed to form a national unity government and so forth. We have to remember they're living under military occupation, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. And the majority of the Palestinian people don't live either in the West Bank or Gaza. So we're talking about a very, very sort of marginal fraction of historic Palestine and a minority of the Palestinian people who actually live there. The question is, what can Fatah and Hamas do? What agenda do they have to bring not just peace among themselves, but how do they intend to represent the interests and rights of the Palestinian people as a whole? Not just the ones living under occupation, but the ones inside Israel, the ones who've spent 60 years in exile as refugees and otherwise. So those are the big questions for me. Not just have they sat down and come to terms with each other about how they're going to administer the West Bank and Gaza, which, as I said, is only a small sliver of historic Palestine.
Do you think that both sides will now be looking to, when I say both sides, I mean Hamas and the PLO, will be looking to the United States now for the next move in this?
If they do, that would be a mistake. We've already heard what the U.S. has said this morning, and what they said is what they've been saying for 20 years and more, which is that the Palestinians have to renounce violence, the Palestinians have to recognize Israel, the Palestinians have to do this and they have to do that. No demands whatsoever on the part of the Israelis. They don't have to recognize Palestine, they don't have to renounce violence. The point is that if the Palestinians play into this game, which is a game that the Americans and the Israelis have set up and they've been playing it for 20 years, they continue where they've been for the past 20 years, which is talking, whereas the Israelis continue demolishing and expropriating and building and settling and colonizing. What the Palestinians need to do is to look to each other, look to their own people, to their own interests, to their rights, and to themselves above all, rather than trying to insert themselves into an Israeli and American narrative of ultimately domination. And that's something that's going to have to involve not just the Palestinians who live under occupation, but also the Palestinians who live as second-class citizens inside Israel, and above all, the Palestinians who are in exile, who are completely excluded from this entire process, such as it is.
Now, given all those factors that you've mentioned, factors which clearly mitigate against any kind of quick settlement of this problem in the Middle East, why do you think this move came at this time? What do you think prompted it?
I think both sides are under extraordinary pressure, and it's clear that the Israelis are, especially now with the current American government, the Israelis are in a kind of ascendant position. That is to say, whatever pretense President Obama might once have made that he's going to put any kind of pressure on the Israelis is completely removed. So there's absolutely zero pressure on the Israelis at this point. And so I think the Palestinians, even just looking at the occupied territories, have realized, as I said, the more divided they are, the easier it is for the Israelis to exercise dominance and control over them. So they're taking, I think, a small step in the right direction, but the point is it's a very small step when you look at the overall picture, which is that this is a people who are fighting for their rights, and they're not only living under occupation, they're also living as second-class citizens in an apartheid state and, above all, in exile. And those people need to be attended to, not just the ones living under occupation.
Okay, Saree Makdisi, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.